Welcome to the Remodeling Reimagined podcast, the podcast that gives you an inside look at the remodeling industry from award-winning designers. On this week's podcast, Cindy Cipriani sat down with designers Melissa Firth and Ken Endt to discuss various kitchen layouts. And now, without further ado, here is your host, Cindy Cipriani.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Remodeling Reimagined. Today, we're going to be talking about kitchen layouts. And we know that right now, so many people are considering remodeling their kitchens because that is where everyone is hanging out. No matter how small your kitchen is, that's where people want to be. So I'm sitting down today with two of our award-winning designers, Melissa Firth and Ken Endt, and we're going to be talking about some basics of laying out your kitchen. So, Ken, there's kind of a long and short-term investment involved in laying out a kitchen. Can you make a comment about that?
Sure. In terms of the short-term versus long-term, the short-term is the daily improvements that you're going to get. So that means something that is going to function for you very well. It's going to make food preparation go faster and be easier. You're going to know where all of your pots and pans are, your utensils are all handy for you. And then, of course, the long-term benefit is improving the value of your home. And when we think about, eventually your home might be on the market and having potential buyers walk in and say, wow, this kitchen is laid out beautifully, it looks great, but it functions really well too. So that's the long-term improvement you're going to get with a proper remodel.
Right. So Melissa, when you're talking to a client who's considering redoing their kitchen, how do you kind of point out these long and short-term investment strategies to them?
Well, first of all, it's important to talk to them of how they use the space or how they want to use the space to make sure that, it works out for them. And then I think when you talk resale, Ken said short and long, if you're not planning on selling your house for 8 to 10 years, you need to do it for what works for you for the next 8 years. Anything can look pretty, but it has to work for you first. So, it's really how they want to use it. If they're doing it for resale, then we kind of make it look pretty and make it functionable because it's going to be the wow factor when people walk in there. But it has to work for your everyday. That's the most important part. Hence, that's why people do remodel their kitchen, is because it doesn't work how they have it currently. It's not just because it's outdated in color and style. It doesn't work.
Right, and that brings up different types of kitchen configurations. So there's really kind of 4 major types of configurations. Maybe, Ken, you can elaborate on that.
Right. Well, let's think about what makes up that configuration. It's going to be your appliances and your cabinets and the countertops that go with them. So when we talk about configuration, we're talking about the alignment of all of those. So imagine a galley kitchen, which has everything, all of those cabinets and appliances on 2 sides and in a long pathway. So galley kitchen is one. Sometimes all of those items just exist on a single wall. We call those a one-wall kitchen. They can be very efficient as well. And then, of course, the other 2 primary configurations are a U-shaped, where you have things on 3 walls, and then an L-shaped, where we have 2 walls involved, but these walls are adjacent to one another.
Yes, so each of these configurations really is going to depend on the physical limitations of your home and your room. Some people are extending their house and saying, you know what, this is where everyone wants to be. I need more space in my kitchen. And right now, the confinement of my walls is not going to allow me to have the configuration that I'm really desiring. And so a addition will help to broaden the area, bring more elements into it so that you can really use, as a designer, we can use our imaginations to come up with the best scenario for you and your family. And, we have to talk about what makes a good layout for you and your home. So Melissa, what are some of the considerations that we mean when we say a good layout?
You know, how do you use the space? Do you eat dinner in your kitchen? And if so, the island area or the seating area has to have enough seats to fit, your family. The other hard part, like we said, if you're not doing an addition, we're working between walls that are existing. So how do we make the most out of that space? Nobody uses their kitchen the same. Nobody's kitchens are the same. So it's a very personal, topic when you sit down with somebody and ask, how do you use it? And a good thing to ask is, what do you have now that doesn't work? And that sometimes answers that question of what they need to gain in that space, because there's not a perfect layout, and that as designers, you have to get creative to get everything in the space that they need. And I tell people all the time, number one is function. If it doesn't work for you, it has to. I have a kitchen and I do this for a living, and every night I walk in my kitchen, I'm like, oh, I wish my trash can was closer to where I do my prep. But you don't think about that until somebody's asking you, where do you prep your food? Do you want to be able to throw it out there? Or do you want the trash somewhere else? So, really digging into, how you use it.
Yes, the investment in a kitchen is going to not only save you money, but time. And, a lot of people don't consider that when they're used to working in a space that wasn't designed just for you. You spend time walking around an island if things aren't placed where they should be. You can waste a lot of time and energy doing that, looking for things, trying to make one meal and you're constantly going back and forth across the room to the garbage can, or your sink is too far away from your refrigerator. So all sorts of things like that come into play. And what makes it helpful is having a good work triangle. And maybe, Ken, you can tell us, what we mean by that.
Sure. Well, what does a work triangle mean? And that's going to be defined by the three major appliances or components of your kitchen. So that, of course, is your sink, then your range or cooktop, and the refrigerator, because food prep and actual cooking are all based on those 3 points. Certainly there is a preferred rhythm to them. You don't want them to be too far. You don't want them to be too close. And that's why we like to ask families, well, how many chefs are in the family? So we think about that extra clearance so that two people can dance around one another when they're doing all of their cooking. But we as kitchen design experts know what that right balance is for positioning and for distance, and making all of that work so that your kitchen is easy to use.
Yes, so it actually has zones that come into consideration. And, Melissa, what are some of those zones that we like to talk about?
You can talk about a hot zone and a cold zone. And a hot zone is where, the hot appliances are, your oven, your range, things like that. And then your cold zone is your sink, your refrigerator, and what gets the most traffic and how does it get used is how you decide what works for you. In addition to, hot and cold zones, if you're a big coffee drinker, you might want a coffee bar zone. If you entertain a lot, you might want a wine bar zone. So it's thinking where all those things go, for your everyday use, let alone that, that entertaining part of it. And some people have coffee and wine, but
well, coffee in the morning, wine at night, right?
Bingo.
You need both.
That's the best mix.
That's right. So as designers, we really have fun because we can start asking the right questions, start really getting clarity and focus on how each individual family functions in their kitchen. A kitchen that we're designing for someone who maybe works from home or is retired and spends most of the day at home is going to be totally different than someone who eats out all the time and just entertains maybe on a Sunday night or a Friday evening and wants more people to be sitting in the kitchen around an island. So every single time we do a design, we're customizing it for that family. It's not just a simple, well, let's plug in the cabinets that work in the space. And that's what you get when you go to, just like maybe a cabinet shop, and they're just going to plug in, the cabinets that fit. And they're not taking into consideration the lifestyle, the cooking style, all of these other elements, these zones that we were talking about. So if you're going to invest in your kitchen, you want to make sure that all of these considerations have been discussed. And as part of our process, that is exactly what we do. So Melissa, maybe you could elaborate a little bit on what our process is, how that design build company walks people through getting exactly what they may not even realize they need.
Well, again, I think it's talking about how they use it and asking those questions. And we ask people questions that they never knew they even had to think about, when doing a kitchen. And, it's asking the questions, it's guiding them on the correct storage elements, talking through, like Ken mentioned, the work triangle. Some people don't even know what that is. But as we explain to them, you don't want to walk around your island 10 times, as you're prepping dinner because your refrigerator is on the whole other side of the room, it's really digging in, to that. And the questions on how they use, the space. I was just thinking of a past project that I recently just worked on where they are a retired couple and they needed more cabinet space, but their kitchen was it was small, on the smaller side. But one of the biggest things they needed in their kitchen was the television. And a lot of people want a television in their kitchen because that's where they sit during the day. And, so we designed a cabinet around the television. So when they're sitting in there at their island peninsula area, they can see the television, and that was top priority to him. So as important as asking how they use it, I think it's asking both, parties that use the kitchen, how they use it, because they're two completely different answers.
That's true. And there's other considerations that maybe you haven't thought about, such as pets. Some people have their pets in the kitchen, either in a crate or their eating station. And where are they going to be comfortable in this new design? Even codes, knowing what is going to be up to code and not is important. I recently went to a house where the stove is sitting by itself and there's no cabinet on one side. Now that doesn't meet code anymore. You need cabinets on countertop on both sides. No one had mentioned this to this homeowner, and she's interested in selling her house in a few years. So, knowing that bit of information, she made the decision to move some cabinets around. She wanted a different layout so that she could have, the right layout so that anyone else coming in, there's not going to be a problem with inspections. All these little things come into play, and that's what makes our job as designers fun, because we have the knowledge, we have the experience, we've seen all different situations and worked with so many different homeowners, and we actually dream about our projects, right? Do you guys? I mean, sometimes in the middle of the night, you go, oh, I got this great idea. So utilize us, utilize our imaginations. We would love to come out and reimagine your remodeling project. So thank you for coming once again and listening to this session of Remodeling Reimagined, and we will catch up with you next time.
Once again, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And if you're looking to start a remodeling project, you can learn more about our design process at CiprianiRemodelingSolutions.com, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.